So today, we're going to dig into this really simple but honestly powerful idea that just the act of naming something, a feeling, a pattern, a problem, can give you an incredible amount of power over it.
You know that feeling, right? That sense of being completely overwhelmed by something you can't even put your finger on? It feels less like a problem you can solve and more like you're just stuck in the middle of a storm, just trying to ride it out.
And that's the perfect place to start. When a problem doesn't have a name, it really does feel like weather. It's this big, powerful storm that just rolls in, messes everything up, and then rolls out, leaving you wondering what on earth just happened.
It all starts with the symptoms. You know how it goes. First, there's just this deep, bone-weary exhaustion that you can't seem to shake. And then comes the irritability. You've got that super short fuse, and suddenly the smallest thing feels like a huge personal attack.
Oh, and you can't forget the classic, right? Waking up at 3 in the morning, your mind is just racing and there's no way you're getting back to sleep. Sound familiar? Yeah, these are all just signs that the storm is raging.
But here's the catch. Just describing the chaos, the exhaustion, the irritability, that's not the same as actually understanding what's causing it. As long as you can only see the symptoms, you're stuck just reacting to everything. You're just trying to survive the weather. And it leaves you feeling totally powerless. Like this is just something that happens to you.
Okay, but what if you could change all that? This is where we get to the real turning point. It's the incredible power that comes from a simple act of language. It all boils down to this. The moment you give that storm a name, you completely change your relationship to it. You stop being a victim of the weather, and you start becoming, well, a meteorologist. You can actually begin to understand the system itself. So for example, instead of just this vague fog of burnout, you can start to see specific, repeatable patterns. Maybe you name the denial tax. That's the hidden cost of pretending everything's fine. Or the isolation trap. You know, when you pull away from people right when you need them the most. Or the one we're going to look at next, the confidence pendulum. All of a sudden, that fog starts to have some structure.
And this is what's so amazing. The second you can name a problem, it stops being this heavy, vague feeling trapped inside your head, and it becomes a concrete idea, something you can actually talk about with other people. It makes it real.
And that can lead to maybe the most powerful 5 words you can hear from someone else. I thought I was the only one. I mean, how many times have we all felt that? When you name a shared experience, it just shatters that feeling of isolation. It's proof that you're not going crazy, and you are definitely not alone. Okay, so let's really dig into this with a great metaphor. We're going to focus on that confidence pendulum to get a feel for how we usually experience these kinds of unnamed problems. I mean, just think about the huge distance that pendulum travels. One week, you feel absolutely unstoppable, like you are crushing everything you touch. The next, you are completely convinced you're a fraud and the whole thing is about to come crashing down. That is a massive, and I mean massive, exhausting swing. And here's the thing. As long as your focus is stuck on those huge swings, on the dramatic highs and the crushing lows, the problem feels impossible to solve. It's like you're just along for the ride, totally at the mercy of these wild emotional shifts. But this is where we get to the real aha moment. We're about to totally shift where we're looking. We're going to move our focus away from the symptom, that big dramatic swing, and onto the real source of all that movement. So let me just ask you, what if all that energy you're spending trying to manage the chaos down at the bottom is completely misplaced? What if you've been looking at the wrong part of the system this whole time? And boom, here it is. This is the secret. The swing at the bottom, that's where all the drama happens, right? It travels for miles. But the pivot point, way up at the very top, the spot where the whole thing actually starts moving, it barely moves at all, just a few tiny degrees, and that is where all the leverage is. So to put it simply, that pivot point is the small underlying pattern that's driving the whole chaotic system. And the act of naming that pattern, of calling it the confidence pendulum, that is what gives you access. That's what puts the controls in your hand. This insight is what allows us to go from feeling completely overwhelmed to a place where we actually have some agency. This is how you learn where to grab the string. So let's just walk through the path here. It's pretty straightforward. Step 1, you've got an unnamed problem that feels like weather. Step 2, you give it a name, which makes it real and discussable. Step 3, from there, you can find that tiny pivot point, which suddenly makes the whole problem feel workable. And finally, step 4, you realize you can gain agency by making small, strategic adjustments right there at the top. Now, I want to be super clear about this. This isn't magic. The pendulum doesn't just poof disappear. The patterns that drive it might always be there in some form, but the problem shifts. It goes from being this overwhelming force of nature to a specific system that you can actually understand and influence. It becomes workable.
And that's really the whole game, isn't it? The confidence swings might still happen, but they don't own you anymore. Why? Because you're not down at the bottom trying to stop this massive heavy weight. Now you know exactly where to grab the string.
So, I'll leave you with this challenge. What is one unnamed storm in your life right now? What's the one thing that feels like weather, that if you just gave it a name, today you could finally start to work with it?